The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar presented to you by Cordis Solutions and TechWire Asia. My name's Joe. I'm going to be hosting and starting off the first half of this webinar. I hope you all find it very useful. We should last probably around 40 minutes, something like that. We're going to allow 10 minutes at the end for questions, and then we've got 10 minutes leeway if we just overrun, or maybe we'll get away a little bit early as well. Okay, so the subject for today's webinar is to do with SAP and MasterData and how we can use various more friendly graphical user interfaces to interface into SAP, into the MasterData repository. So we'll just have a quick look through the agenda. I'll just give you a quick overview of myself and my co-presenter, Ramesh Vasani, shortly. I'll be looking at some of the things that myself as an analyst have come up against in my work for TechWire Asia and various other tech publications over the years. Then I shall hand over to Ramesh, who will take you through a demonstration of Cordis's solutions and how particular pieces of software can really develop return on investment into SAP. For you guys out there, he'll also be having a look at Advio, who are a case study. They're a user of Cordis Solutions software. And then finally rounding up with some issues about integration and the overall landscape with Ramesh. And then we'll hand over to questions and answers, open it up to the floor. If you look on the right of your user interface there, you should have in GoToMeeting, you should have a question box. If you've got any questions coming up, just during the course of this webinar, start typing them into there. They're collated in the background, and hopefully we should get around to answering some of them. If they're particularly apposite questions, we'll try and answer them on the fly, as it were, if we think it's going to be really helpful to everyone else. So a fairly informal do. I hope you find it useful, and if any of you do actually have to duck out at any stage, the whole thing's being recorded, and you will get a link to the recording of the webinar, so you can listen to what you've missed at your own leisure. That's me, the black and white chap on the left, Joe Green. I don't often smile, as you can tell in that photo. I've been writing about, in fact, I've been working in technology now since about 1998. I guess I first went online in 92, giving away my age a bit there. I worked for a company called TechWire Asia, which is part of the Hybrid News Group. And I'm joined by Ramesh Vasani of Cordis. Ramesh, are you joining us today?
I am indeed. Thank you for the introduction. Guys, hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Ramesh Vasani. I'm a solution architect at Cordis Solutions, accountant by trade, went into management consultancy, and I have a passion for making things happen and trying to improve people's businesses. But I'll talk about what we're doing later on in terms of building the enablers. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'll hand over back to Joe to tell you a little bit about some of the trends and thoughts, leadership that he's collated, and where we're going in terms of direction in this space.
Okay, lovely, thanks. Yeah, we'll hear from Ramesh a great deal more later on. So just the ubiquitous introduction. TechWire Asia is part of the Hybrid News Group. We've launched another site, for instance, at the moment called Tech HQ. But TechWire Asia, its strapline is where business and technology meet. So we look at trends in business technology. So, for instance, things like software, CRMs, ERPs, management software, e-commerce. All sorts of issues and news we cover. We do reviews, We try and provide insights. We talk to end users, and we also talk to technology developers about where they're going, where they see the market going. So we are a fairly technical site, I guess, but we do attempt to skew our content towards technology officers, CTOs, CSOs, also CEOs as well. We do aim for C-suite executives, and hopefully we bring some value to that particular market space. Okay, so I just want to start off really on a I guess it's kind of an odd thing to start on really in the context of ERPs. I just want to have a quick look at security. Those of you of a certain age, will no doubt remember BYOD when it first came up, that bring your own device. And it was really the first manifestation in organizations and businesses that people were getting phones, they were getting tablets, using them at home thinking, this thing is absolutely marvelous, you know, it'd be really good if I could use this at work. And then gradually over time, IT departments began to relax their strictures on devices that could be brought in, devices that could be plugged in the workplace, devices attaching to Wi-Fi or Ethernet. And so gradually IT's role, those of you in IT will know this, is now sort of less of a stricture. It's more of an empowerer, if that's a noun, in that it's a division which helps people achieve business solutions. However, there is a slight problem with that, in that essentially we call them phones, but really every day we all have employees walking into the workplace carrying very powerful portable computers. Some of them are fairly well tied down, iOS, but not uniquely. Some are a bit more open. And if you've got someone coming into your office, for instance, with an Android 5 or an Android 6 phone, they may well have been compromised, and we can get cybersecurity issues via BYOD. So what is tending to happen now in the cybersecurity space is that endpoint security, in my day we used to call it client security, but endpoint security is coming in and it's tying down these devices. So it's tying down laptops, phones and tablets and the like. Now, that's great, and it protects the enterprise from malware and other malicious nasties. But what tends to happen is people are bringing in, for instance, a laptop, or they're being equipped with a laptop, and let's say they want to have a quick chat with a client. There's a new client, and on the phone the client says, okay, well look, let's have a Zoom meeting, or we'll do GoToMeeting like we're doing today, or there's Google Hangouts, and there's Microsoft Link, and there's, you know, various chat and collaboration apps. And of course, as soon as you start tying down endpoints, laptops and phones, it becomes very difficult then to actually do your work. And I think this is really the crux of what we're talking about today. What we need to do is to stop our staff at all levels of the business fighting with their technology. We want to give them ways in which they can do their jobs, and that's with a capital D for do their jobs. You know, it's we don't want them sitting there using their devices. We want them hopefully making some money for your particular organizations in this particular case. So let's now have a look at another couple of issues which are affecting this kind of ability for people to work efficiency. And we're going to look at ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning software, which of course come in a million different formats. You know, Salesforce is a big one recently. In fact, in the last couple of days has announced a partnership with Apple. Intriguingly, Apple now moving back into the enterprise space, it would seem. But obviously the one we're going to be looking at today is SAP. Now, ERPs are in many businesses of all sizes, actually. I've seen ERPs in one form or another in 2 or 3 man bands. In particular, any enterprise with remote workers tend to use ERPs. It's that kind of agglomeration of data, of facts, it's a communications hub, and it's the basis from which everyone works, which is great. That's what they're designed to do. What tends to happen, though, is we're not all in the enviable position of being in a startup, in that we're not bringing new business into the world, so we can't go out and shop round for the absolute latest versions of everything, every bit of software and hardware that we use. So we've got ERPs as, inverted brackets, legacy, in that, you know, they might be 5 years old, they might be 10 years old, but they are absolutely core to the business. They're mission-critical, to use the well-known phrase. Now, what sometimes happens, and it's pretty often in larger enterprises, is that your ERP will be in some way made bespoke. Very few people use an ERP off the shelf and they leave it vanilla and they run it. What tends to happen is people upgrade, they have a particular algorithm tweaked, or they have something added on, or they might use a plugin, and so on and so forth. As a result, again, just to hark back to cybersecurity, because it's quite an interesting one, is that IT teams don't apply patches, and it's not because they're, you know, not interested. It's not because they don't care about cybersecurity. It's because patches, for instance, and I've given the example here, 1.0. I've completely made up that nomenclature. Version 1.0 is tested. 1.5, we tested it in a sandbox, says the IT department, and it's flaky with our deployment. It falls over. Our sales reps on the roads lose connection. So we're just going to stick with version 1.0. Now, there is a knock-on from that, in that you've now got, post BYOD, you've now got a group of staff who've got their iPads at home, and they're sat in hotel rooms, or they're out on the road, they've got laptops, and essentially they're trying to connect to what's fairly old software in some cases. Now, there's a great deal of impetus from people like Salesforce, you know, to upgrade, use the latest version, and from SAP as well. And one thing about SAP, which is obviously pertinent to today's discussion, is that its user interface can be quite difficult to use remotely. Now, SAP themselves have produced various iterations of graphical user interfaces which will render to one degree or another on, for instance, an iPad, what have you. But what usually happens is, especially because of this bespoke nature of ERP software, what tends to happen is you get the facility put in place by IT departments of VPNing, for instance, or remote desktop, some kind of thin client. People will dial in to a central repository, a central installation of, for instance, SAP in this case, which is great. But that does produce an overhead. Literally, there's an overhead on bandwidth. There's clearly, because the data is being encrypted, it has to go through typically a hardware gateway or a virtualized gateway. And there's an IT support overhead as well, in that you get phone calls to your IT support departments, you'll get tickets, people working remotely, people in a tearing hurry about to go into a meeting, they can't get the VPN to fire up. And so there are all sorts of little problems and issues. And again, just to circle back round to this central point, which I'll keep reiterating, we're trying to get people to do their jobs here. We're trying to get people to do the task at hand, not wrestle with the tech that they're using. So let's talk now quickly about personalization. I touched on it there and some of the problems that it produces. Every single organization out there, every business has got different requirements. And that's the reason, of course, why there's quite a big market for small software development houses to go out and write bespoke software from scratch. And, you know, people will do this, and they'll put out prices for, you know, small JavaScript or Java apps running on MySQL, what have you, maybe 4D, or even there's an Apple version called FileMaker. But what tends to happen is that this bespoke nature can cause some issues going forward. So let's say, for instance, you've got a range of freelancers or occasional users, perhaps some interns, and you want to give them a view onto SAP. It has to be quite carefully managed because you don't want to give them administrative access, and you only need to give them access to a particular data set. So you bring in your $1,000 a day consultants or developers and the rest, I suspect, and you might have a bespoke application or applicationette developed for you. Unfortunately, with that, you are almost developing a GUI from scratch in many ways, because you're pulling out disparate bits of data and you're having to think up new ways to present it in order to present a set of data or a set of views which are very much according to your requirements. And so therefore you will get users who've attempting to interact with your ERP software, who I wouldn't say confused, but again, they're going to find it quite difficult. There might be a struggle for them to get up and running. And so therefore, again, circling back round, we've now got a situation in which we've got people who are finding it problematic to get the job done, and getting the job done is kind of what it's all about here. So what we are therefore thinking about doing is, and I think it's probably the reason why web apps were particularly popular. In particular, I mean, Flash became very popular, didn't it, in about the turn of the millennium, in that it was really a web-based application, which of course anyone can access more or less anywhere. Obviously, it fell over in iOS, but I think the general thrust was there. So what we're after here, and this is why I just want to bring up this last slide about endgaming. We're getting the job done, few overheads and distractions as possible. We want our users using familiar tools. What are familiar tools here? Well, web browser, clearly. We've got Microsoft Outlook, Excel, Word, things like that, things that people use in every job. And we essentially want to be able to have our end users use those tools, but preserve data integrity in the back end. So we want solutions really, ideally, that hook into ERP, but present in a way that users are very happy with. And of course, this is where APIs come in, and it's the empowerment, if you like, of the different pieces of software that large organizations use, in that they'll all talk to each other via APIs, but some kind of management system will control those privileges into each of the disparate apps. So with that in mind, I'm now going to hand over to Ramesh, whose solutions are particularly Excel-based in this particular case, and I shall stop talking now, and I hope you found that a kind of brief, if slightly rambling overview of some of the possibilities and some of the issues which I found in the last couple of years. Okay, so I'll hand over to you now, Ramesh.
Thank you, Joe. Guys, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through a couple of slides, and then I want to go into a live demonstration. So I'm gonna do a little bit of scene setting and pick up from what Joe was talking about. He mentioned return on investment, he mentioned integrity of data, he mentions getting the information to the right people to make the job done, and get people who are food technicians and who are engineers to do engineering and food technicians and creating new stuff, and not spending time on administrative tasks. And that's what we've tried to do as Cordis Solutions, build applications to help make people's lives easy, yet at the same time without making sure the SAP system doesn't lose control of what's happening and the process is being followed. Now, I'm sure most of these points on these slides resonate with all of you, so I'm not going to read them all out. And if you do need a copy of the deck, Juliana will be more than happy to send that. So I'm just going to carry on, set the scene for the application, and then do a live demonstration. The next slide I want to do is just positioning the application in terms of, we were asked by SAP to put together a single one-page slide for which they can use for their sales. So why would people want to use tools like myMasterData to address any things that they have with master data? So we said, well, typically we're looking at if an organization wants to simplify processes, and going back to what Joe was talking about, leave the familiar things that they're all familiar with, i.e. Outlook, Excel, then, and they don't want to, and the organization does not want to spend lots of money retraining, then myMasterData is a perfect tool for something like this. As you guys know, so a lot of you are SAP folks, if we do not get the master data right, the challenges of getting it wrong are unforgiving. SAP doesn't behave the way it's meant to be doing, so therefore everything goes wrong. So therefore it's important that we do create master data quickly, as efficiently as possible, and accurate as possible. Otherwise SAP doesn't work, period. Now, how is this different from any of the other things? Well, here what we've tried to do is going back into the word that was on the other slide called interoperability. What we've tried to do is pick up the familiarity that people have with Excel and get Excel to be the front end, or SAP UI5 to be the front end, to then talk to SAP. So people actually who are creating these master data or even requesting master data, they don't need to talk to SAP. They never see SAP. Okay, so in terms of users, as you can see, it goes across a wide range of users, ranging from the master data team to people who are specialists who need to fill specific master data in specific types of master data. You may say the accounting department needs to fill in the contact details for the collection of the cash. You may say that the procurement department needs to fill in the procurement contact person and the ordering currency. So all of those things are handled by this thing. Okay, and the value driver is obviously simplification, modernization. Right, without much ado, how does it work? So a bit of scene setting. First and foremost, there's a little bit of configuration that one needs to do, and the configuration is very simple, and I would say that. It's simple in the sense that what you need to do is you define what master data you want to play with. So you can define, I want to use materials or customers or GL accounts or projects, whatever you decide. Then the next thing you say, look, what's my operations that I want to happen? You can say, I want people to change master data, I want to create master data, I want them to copy master data. And then you go into the fun part and you say, right, fine, I know I've defined what I want them to do. Now, how many fields of the hundreds of fields that's available am I going to let them use? And that's where you do the defining of the data sets. Okay, so here we are defining the data set, saying, look, for the plant in Italy, I only want one table to be used, and these are the only fields that person will be able to change in Italy. So they will not have access to the basic data. They're only going to have access to plant-specific data in Mark. So that's how specific you can make it. So this is all configured in a one-time environment. And then the next thing you do is you install an add-on onto your Excel, and that's it. Now you're wondering, is it really that simple? Let's have a look. I'm now going to stop, and I'm going to go into SAP to actually show this whole thing. And I'm going to go through all the things that we talked about over here in terms of initiation and how we can initiate the system. I'm going to talk about the workflowing in terms of email notifications, the dashboards that it has, the way you do control what's actually going into SAP in terms of approvals. And we'll look at some of the flows in terms of different people can see different views. So let's look at this in a real life environment with SAP, and we can see how it works. So I'm going to escape here for a while, and I'm going to go into the IMG. So here you should be able to see my IMG, and if I go to the master data IMG over here, the first thing I do is I define the different types of master data I want. In our demo environment, we've only got cost centers, materials, projects, and vendor master set up. So I'm going to look at, let's have a look at, say, material masters. So if I look at material masters, in material masters, we've decided we're going to allow people to create, delete, copy. I'm going to look at right now, just to give you a flavor of things, I'm going to look at operation type X, which is called copy, and let's have a look at that. So if I go to the copy situation, and I'm going to go to the next level in the IMG. So I'm going to drill down again into materials, and I'm going to look at the action of X that we looked at in terms of copy. That's over here. And if I now look at the data set, so when I ask people to copy, I'm saying that, look, you can copy information from the basic data, plant data, accounting data, and whatever. So if I look at the basic data, I can see in there, I'm saying, oh, basic data consists of these 3 tables. And within those 3 tables, if I go back one over here, these are the fields that the person can play around with. Some of them will have default values. Some of them will have help enabled. Some of them will, and I can control whether they're mandatory, they're optional, and so on. So it's all of these things, configuration I can do. I can define my own data sets, and that's how easy it is. Okay, so let's see this in action. Okay, so once I've finished this piece, then obviously I can say, look, I'm going to get, in this case, because I'm trying to run a demo as one person without confusing you, I am going to use 2 roles. I'm going to use a persona for Mark, who's going to be creating the data, and a persona for Mary, who's going to approve, and who's his manager, will be reviewing the data. So how does it work? Well, first and foremost, one of the things Joe mentioned before was one of the problems with master data is processes. If I don't know the process of how do I initiate that I need new master data, it doesn't work. So what we try to do is make that process as easy as possible. Now, some of you may be using Fiori, so I could go into my Fiori screen and I go to request master data. And if I double click over here, I get this thing saying, so I've logged in right now. If I look at this persona over here as Mark, and in Mark's case, if I go request master data, he can only request, materials, projects, and vendor masters. Again, persona driven, SAP persona driven. If I do the same for Mary, so here, if I look at my user is Mary. And if I do the same again for her, request master data, you'll see she has a limited set of master data she can request. She can only request materials and projects, and not the other third item that we had with Mark. Okay, so I'm going to go back to so again, if I change these things, you'll notice my selection changes. So look, if it's going to be projects, the screens are sensitive to what I'm asking for, so people only need to put in what they need to put in. They don't get confused with lots of fields which they need to complete. Okay, so that's enough of this. So that's how the initiation happens. The initiation can happen either through an Excel front end or web application. So now let's look at the Excel front end. I'm simply going to create an Excel file. Well, I'm opening Excel basically. And the fact that I've added in my add-on over here, I can initiate. So I'm going to initiate, in this case, I'm going to create a very simple item. I'm going to use projects, and the reason why I'm using projects is very simple. It's only got 2 structures and 2 data groupings. So I'm going to use projects as an example. I'm going to say, right, fine. Now, first and foremost, what I need to do is make sure I'm the right person. So in here, if I go into my system setting, you'll notice I'm actually logged in as Mark, who's basically the guy who does the work, and Mary's the manager. Okay, so I'm closing this down and I'm going to initiate. So I'm going to say, look, I want to create some projects, and I want to do create function. I want it requested by Ramesh in a demo, and quite important. Okay, I can populate all the reasons, critical priorities, and so on, and I initiate. By simply doing this, it's now started a process. It's given me the key fields that I defined in my SAP system, saying, look, to initiate a project, you only need to tell me what the profile you want to use. So if I don't know the profile, I hit value help, and I say, look, it's actually an IT project, so I can type in IT. And it says, oh, fine, you've got these bunch of projects available for IT. So I'm just going to use the first one. I'm going to say my top node's going to be this fellow over here. And again, if I don't know these things, even though it tells me it's an X, I can press value help. And it says, look, that's my definition. I can just give it the ID. Now, I know in this case, 001 has been set up with a specific naming convention. So I'm going to follow that naming convention. In this case, it's A with a dot 001, and it's free format numbering, so I'm just going to choose the next number which I know is in the sequence. But again, I could do a help to find it, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to rush a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to copy this item over here. Okay, and I'm going to say, let's have a project to, I don't know, build a new production line. Build a new production line. Okay, so once I've defined my top node, what I now can do is I can basically be lazy and I can copy. Control C, and I'm going to have in this situation maybe 4 nodes. Okay, I'm going to take this out from the top. That's going to remain. And I'm going to call this one dot 1. I'm going to call this one dot 2. Control C. I'm going to call this one dot 2. And now I'm getting a bit bored, so I'm just going to simply hyphen this and just grab them down. Okay. Now, in order to build a new production line, I may want to have 4 stages. Clear the site. Clear the site. Procure the items, procure materials, assemble. You wouldn't employ me to do and assemble and test. Keep it very simple. My spelling is not very good. Okay, materials. Let's just correct that. Okay, and that's it. And it's as easy as this. If I now submit this, I've initiated, the workflow started. It says request number 8, lots of zeros, and 31 started, been successfully created. So now if I was Mary and I was wandering around somewhere, and what Mary would have got is an email. So if I go to Mary's Outlook, and here, I'm going to just quickly refresh it. Action required. Come on, machine. You're still thinking, as you can see the little, ooh, dear. I'm already signed on to. Let's do it again. I've already signed. He's right. If I request it over here, here's the email. 31 been initiated. Quite important. Initiative mark. So I now know there's something to do. Also, anybody who's in the chain in that creation of the data. So if I look at this setup, in this setup, if I look at the dashboard, in terms of I look at the overview dashboard, here I've kept it very simple. I've just said to set up a project, I only need 2 people. Okay, I need the initiation piece, and then I need someone to complete the basic data. And any one of these 4 people can complete the basic data for me, and the project will be released. Yeah. So I've kept it very simple for demonstration purposes. So now, what is the basic data that I need to go? So Mark also got an email. Mary got an email, as we just saw, that she has to complete the basic data. So what Mary can do, if she was roaming around, or even Mark was roaming with somebody else, simply they'll get this email saying, oh, you've got to create some new data. I can just simply cut and paste this number, Control C, execute Excel, and put that number in to my master data. So I can be wherever I am, and I just simply go to master data, get data, plonk in that number, find, and it knows exactly what it is. And so, oh, fine, I've got to fill in some basic data. So let's just do that. And immediately it's saying, right, fine. This is what you need to do. You need to fill in some basic data. The business area, the personal area, the project start date, the guy in charge, that's all missing. Can you please just put it in? So I can just select the guy in charge over here. It's Ramesh, who is going to be supported by, I'm going to have team leads, team lead 01, team lead. And I can simply cut and paste this over here, put this as number 2, and then drag and drop it. And here we are. I can populate all the other data that I need to plan. I can have as many fields or as less fields as I want. Okay, and I simply just say, fine, submit it. Now, when we looked at the dashboard before, you may have noticed that it was actually partially completed. It said initiated. Now, if I now submit this, it says data is totally submitted. And if I go look at the dashboard again, in terms of this screen over here, it says basically the initiation, the basic stage has been done, has been completed, and so is the initiation stage. So both of them have now been completed. So now it's ready to be created into SAP, but it's not there yet. Why? Because my boss hasn't approved it. So Mary's now got another email. This time around, the email says, before it says there was an action for her to do to complete some data. Now there's another action for her saying the data set's been completed and she has to now, review it and approve it. Okay, so it's a different notification right here. Real-time information is fantastic. It says this has been now completed. All the data sets have been done. Can you please kindly proceed and post the data to SAP? This also is available in a UI5 environment. So if Mary were to log into a UI5 and she was walking around and she had a Fiori type approach to life, then she can do it through that as well by simply going over here, going into my approval, and in the approval module, she'll see one of the items that she's going to approve is master data. We'll just wait for a while for it to bring up all the data. In this case, waiting for approval. Just thinking, and there it is. It's got all of the items that it needs. I can have attachments if I put attachments against it. It tells you what it is. Ramesh in demo, quite important. It's some projects which I'm creating, etc., etc. So again, from a look and feel, from mobility, it's all available. Now let's finish off the item, and then I can see this in SAP. So I've gone through the process of filling in the data sets, the number of fields that I was asked to fill in the second set. So now it's ready for approving. So now if I go back, and now obviously if I look at this screen called data sets, now you see this over here called operation complete. I simply press that. As soon as I press that, it's now going to be created in SAP. It's as simple as that. Okay, so if I now pop over to SAP, Oh dear, no, I can't pop over to SAP. It's giving me a hierarchy. There's an error. Let's have a look. Let me fix it. Structure for one. Yeah, you know why? Because I put a hyphen instead of a dot. That wasn't very clever, Ramesh, but never mind. Okay, and I've locked it. Okay, so it will then simply go into, and again, in terms of having a quick look, here's one which I created earlier in traditional Blue Pizza style. So let's go back to our Excel sheet. Okay, if I go back to one which I did earlier on, get data. 1, 2, 3, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 30. And here you can see the dashboard was all completed, and it said it's actually posted in SAP. Because I didn't make any mistakes, ready to be posted in SAP. And if I go to SAP, actually it's all created. The other thing I want to now show you is do the initiation again, but this time I'm going to be a bit more complicated, and I'm now going to play around with Excel, with materials. So supposing I want to be lazy and I want to initiate a material, and this time around I'm going to create a material through a copy function. So I'm saying, look, I want to create a material, mechanical engineering, trading goods, and I want to use a copy function, and I want it, need it now, need Ramesh. Okay, so I initialize it, say yep. I get a totally blank screen. It says, what do you want to create? Okay, actually, did I say create or did I say copy? I didn't, I should have said copy. Let me do it one more time. Initiate material masters is fine. From the mechanical engineering, trading goods is good. I want to do copy materials. Okay. Instead of creates, I should have chosen copy. So Ramesh and copy from existing. Okay. Initialize. So as soon as I do that, it's now giving me a screen which says, look, here, this set of screens over here up to F is saying, what do you want to create in terms of the materials you want to create? And here my dividing line is G, saying copy from. So I'm going to say I want to create new materials. So I'm going to use a material which I've got before, which I've called MT, and I just happen to know this. MT90 fan. Okay, now if I didn't know the reference material, that's not a problem, because what I can do is I can hit on value help. Okay, I can hit on value help, and it will give me a list of all the materials which are available. So if I say plant 2000, and the description has something called MT in it, can you go find it for me? Now, it's going to take a little bit of time because it's going to the SAP system, looking around, and it's come back with all these materials which have got anything with MT in it. As you can see, I'll just make the screen bigger, but you can see how quick that was. Okay, so this is all, everything's real time. I'm looking at SAP straight away, and any data I put in, you know, it's all live. Okay, so I'm just going to cancel this. I'm actually going to key it in because I know where it is, MT90 fan. And I'm going to call the materials that I want to create MT90 fan 100. I'm going to call that in the next one 110. Whoops. 101. Let's fill this in. Cooling fan. Plant. If I don't know, I again look at value help. The value help is quite good in the sense that if I choose plant 2000, then I go into the storage location. It's now only going to show me the fields which are available for that plant. So it's context sensitive help. So I can put that in sales organization. Let's put it in 2000. Distribution channel, I'm going to leave it blank. And I'm going to do the same over here, 2000, value help. Okay, I could, as I said, type it in and just quickly just do this one here, 1000. Okay, now is there any reference sales organization? And I'm just going to go for this field here, and then I'm going to stop. So just put in 2000. So here what I want to show you is how quickly it is to create lots of cooling fans in one go. So if I now just simply copy this line and I copy it 3 more times, I'm now just going to change this number here to a 1. I'm going to call it cooling fan 01, and I'm going to call this cooling fan 02, 00. Okay, so if I now simply, okay, Ramesh is not getting very good at cop numbers, 0, 1, and 0. Ooh, okay, so, oh God, okay. It's one of those days today, I think. I'm getting finger problems. Okay. All right, so I'm now just going to copy this down. I'm just going to overwrite it instead of typing it in. Okay, 1, 3. I was going to do drag and drop, but I've decided it's quicker just to type it in. 02, 03. Okay, and if I now initiate this and submit this, basically is now going to create a process saying to create a material master record. What we've done in the system, we've said, look, in order to create a material master record, we need 4 people to be engaged with the process. So if I now look at my dashboard in this situation, it says the 4 people that you need are Mark, Mark, and Mark. Again, it could be different names. You need someone to initiate it. That's been happened. Then you need someone to put in the basic data, the plant data, the accounting data, and so on. I'm only going to do the basic data to show you, again, how much information is copied from fan M90, which I asked it to. So if I go and look at, again, same situation, Mark has got an email to say, he's been given a request 500,091, whereby he needs to populate some basic data. So if I just do that, and here you can see it's pulled in information like gross weight, and again, the data that I had was a bit empty. So as a result, it's pulling across whatever it has, which was there. And it now needs me to put in whatever else I want. Okay, so I can now put in things. Now, I could be lazy and I just say submit, but then it's giving me a bunch of error messages saying, well, you can't. Base unit, material group, and the transaction group, you need to populate, otherwise you can't create it. So let me just do that. So base unit, I will create something. I'm going to call it maybe each. So I can go to value help, type in whatever the abbreviation is for each, and Control C, done. Material group, do the same thing, value help. I'll just use the first one called metal parts, that will do. I'll do the same thing again, Control C, Control V. And I'll move over to the right and look at the transaction group. And I'll do the same, value help. It says, how does it come? Transportation, is it on pallets or liquids? In this case, it will be delivered on pallets. Control C, and I'll copy it down. And now if I submit it, you'll see 2 of the pieces of work that I need in terms of workflow has been done. and the next person or the next. Now I don't have to do this in order. So if I now go back to the dashboard, you'll see I've got the basic data has been done, the initiation's been completed, but the sales and accounting view has not been done. I could do the sales accounting view in advance, so there's no sequentialness about this. I can go and say, right, fine, I'm going to log in as Mark, and I've got an email, because again, Mark would have an email saying, can you fill in the prices? So I can go and fill in the prices. So I can say, right, from the unit prices, again, each, if I don't know, I press the button. In this case, it says not supported unit prices for each one of them. And I can say it's £10. And I'll just copy it down. And the price control, is it moving average or is it standard? Let's have a look. I'll choose to be standard. So I'll just Control C and copy it down. And I save it, or submit in this case. Okay, so now I've basically done 3 of the items which I need to create master data. And again, I can complete this thing, and as soon as the last one's done, it will be created in SAP. And that's how simple it is. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm now going to stop the demonstration and go back to the slide to finish off some of the things which we need to cover. Okay, so what I showed you was the process whereby we created the items. We got notifications of everyone who's involved in the process were engaged to join. And as soon as the last item's been done, the person who's been approver has the option to create the materials. It's only at that stage it actually goes and creates the item into SAP. Okay. So who are the people using it and what benefits are they getting? So I'm quickly going to go through this quick case study. Adveo, they're like an Office Depot or a Staples in Europe. They're one of the larger companies in this space. 1,200 professionals, 17,000 distributors and customers, and so on, operating in 9 countries. They wanted a master data solution which will react very quickly. They can create things into the catalogs very quickly so they can sell it. So they needed, again, a central tool which can then give it to all the different countries and make sure it's harmonized master data across everything. And only the plant level data or the country level data is only different. And they use this application for that. Once we put this in, within the 9 months time frame, we were live. It took us basically 12 weeks to go up to UAT, and then they did a phase rollout across 4 countries. What did they get out of this? Something that used to take 2 to 3 days now takes 2 to 3 hours. In terms of money in savings, over 33% savings in cost of the master data process. In terms of savings in integrity and governance, huge. How do you quantify that? So this is basically the feedback that we got back from the CIO, Luis Namoras, from Adveo. That's all great. How does it hang together? Very quickly, the solution is very simple in terms of hanging together. The slide for the landscape has been hidden away, so let's quickly look at that. It's very simple. You've got the Office application, the gateway is a communication mechanism in SAP, the backend system who is talking to. Okay, how do you get access to this stuff? Well, that's very easy as well. The application itself is also available in the SAP App Center. So if I click on that icon, you'll see I'm now going to the SAP Application Center and my master data is there. It's one of the certified applications which SAP's promoting as part of the interoperability and making SAP simple concepts. Okay, so it's on the SAP App Center. If you do have problems with this application, how does it work? Well, that's also very simple. Nothing new. some of this is an old slide of the SAP Marketplace and now replaced with a web front end, and it's the same concept. The item, because it's certified, you go into the OSS, you can see the maintenance. If there's any bugs that we find, we log them up and we provide them to the people, and it's as simple as using your SAP system. And on that note, I'm very conscious that we have overrun, so I'm just going to now hand over to Juliana to see if there's any questions which we can share with you folks. We have probably a couple of questions. We have a couple of questions in terms of which we can go through very quickly. One of the questions we have is on user adoption. So let me quickly answer that question on user adoption. The question on user adoption is basically, how can you tell me a little more about the user adoption? Well, because it was an Excel front end, when we rolled it out to Spain, Italy, Germany, the guys took it very easily. They found it very easy to pick up because it's very Excel based. It's very simple to use. Yeah, I know I was doing a lot of clicking from one screen to another, but again, because I was playing 4 roles as opposed to 1 role that a person would have. We have probably a question for one more question. Again, I think we've already answered that. It says, can you give examples of organizations where the tool was implemented and elaborate a bit more on the benefits? I'll take you back to the last slide. I think they got a fair bit of benefits from there. Okay, let me quickly go back. Julian, I can't seem to see one of the other questions. They said that the payback that they're looking at was very quick, actually.
I got another question saying if you want to create a material to multiple warehouses on initial create, is it possible?
Yes, it is. What it does, with the application also has the ability to extend. So if I want to extend the material to another plant or another warehouse or another sales organization, the screen where I showed create from using a base is a similar approach to that, and it can be done again in seconds.
I got another question. Does the tool work with Z tables?
Yes, it does. And the beauty about the Z tables is because when we're putting the tables in, when I'm defining the tables to the data set, at this stage, I put in the table names. So if there was a table that you had extended and you had a Z field or is a Z table, I just simply populate it in here. And then as soon as I populate it in here, the users can then subsequently choose all the fields available in that tables and say, this is going to be my data set, which I want to create.
I got no more questions.
Excellent. Okay. In that case, look, guys, you've been a fantastic audience. Thank you very much for listening. If you do have any more questions or you want a one-to-one, a bit more relaxed demo of the application, please reach out to Juliana, and she can arrange for this to happen. So what I'm going to do is, if I go to our next slide, Juliana, am I still on screen or you're taking over?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Splendid. No, we're done, I think. Thank you. Perfect. Excellent.
Yep, thank you very much, everyone. That was great. Thanks, Ramesh. And as Ramesh said, if you've got any questions, forward them on to Juliana. And if you've had to duck out or you want to go back and revisit some of the things you've learned today, you'll be sent a link to a recording.
Perfect. Thank you.